For more on the APEC meetings, we're joined now by William Li, the chief economist at the Milken Institute, an economic think tank here. Let's start with Chinese President Xi Jinping. He is pledging new free trade agreements and continuing to open up the domestic market and, of course, upholding multilateralism. What would you say is some of the biggest messages he is sending to fellow APEC leaders and CEOs attending virtually?
Well, President Xi felt it was very important to emphasize, with all of the talk about the dual circulation strategy that China has embarked on to bolster innovation and to focus innovation and growth in domestic demand, that China is still part of the global economy, and want to remind the members of the APEC world that China was still a force in the multilateral trade regime. So I think that was the key message that I think President Xi wanted to convey, which is that China, even though it is focusing on developing innovations and technologies and trying to be on the frontier and the cutting edge of many, many different industries, China will be a multilateral force. Now, of course, the other aspect is that multilateralism, as much as President Xi has talked about, in APEC, it really has a very large regional focus. China wants to be a major force within the region of APEC, and by doing so, consolidate its trade routes.
And, what do you make of the timing of this shortly after we saw the signing of the world's largest trade agreement, the RCEP or RCEP? We just saw that happen a couple days ago, and that is also really focused on the Asia-Pacific region, with the heart of it, with the ASEAN countries. So what do you think of the timing of all these announcements?
I think it consolidates the view that the post-COVID world of trade and multilateralism is going to have regional blocks. We have the European Union, we have the North America, South America trade pacts, we also have the Asia-Pacific trade regions. And I think the key to the future is going to be how these different blocks trade with each other. We're going to have to develop rules of the road, whereby trade within a region is very clear because of these regional trade pacts, but how does trade take place across the trade pacts? How does trade take place with Europe? How does trade take place with the United States and the North American trade area? Those are the new questions that will be arising in the post-COVID world, which I think the globe has got to address. And I think the new Biden administration is going to be looking toward that refocused version of globalization to start off with.
Well, APEC has 21 countries, including the two world's largest economies. Under the Trump administration, though, the United States has mainly kept itself out of APEC. We haven't seen any presence by the Trump administration. Has that hurt the United States at all?
Let me correct you right there. The focus of the Trump administration has been to break up the kind of regional approaches by creating bilateral trade deals. Singapore and then the United States, for example, just signed one not so long ago, and the U.S. has been going on a bilateral approach. I think that's one way of dealing with how different blocks, as I said, how the Asian bloc trades with the U.S. bloc, but it may not be the most efficient way. And going forward, I think what President Biden and President Xi are going to have to do as the largest economies in the world is to arrive at the rules of the road, whereby the two largest economies will have to find a trade framework for intellectual property, for trade and services, trade and financial services, a way to have these large blocks interact with each other to promote the benefits for trade for both sides.
About a minute left, William. So talking about these regional blocks, looking at the Asia-Pacific region, is Asia leading the charge, given that this region has done a better job of handling the pandemic and is starting to recover from the coronavirus pandemic?
Oh, absolutely. And I think Asia has always had the lead in terms of manufacturing and a lot of the global supply chains that have been such an integral part of boosting the global economy into the digital world. And I think one of the things that we will see going forward will be the rise of Europe as well as the United States in the role of financial services and other services that will somehow have to interact with the trades in goods that Asia has become so good at.
Great to hear from you, William Li. Thank you so much for joining us, as always.
Thanks for having me.